Hello and welcome to day 10 of the 12 Days of Chocolatey. I'm your host, Adil Lagari, and Senior Solutions Engineer over at Chocolatey. And at Chocolatey, we are the Windows automation experts. And just a heads up for those of us joining today for the first time, just making sure my video comes through okay. Looks a little strange. Let me just fix that over here real quick. And we should be good. Awesome. So 12 Days of Chocolatey, of course, as you know, is a 12-day event put on by the Chocolatey team. And an hour in every day, we get to regale you with some chocolatey goodies. And that includes talks, webinars, discussions, and Q&A, new feature announcements, and most importantly, the opportunity to win a prize every day if you pay attention. So feel free to go to our YouTube and Twitch channels to join us live and watch some of the other sessions when you have time. And join us live in the next couple of days too, because we've only got a couple of days left now, folks. We're in day 10 now. So today we're going to be talking about managing remote endpoints with Chocolatey using self-service anywhere. Now that's a topic that's very relevant in our current work from home world. So that's why we wanted to highlight it today. And I'm pleased to introduce Paul Broadwith, aka Pobby. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Adil, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, sir. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. Awesome. So Paul is our senior technical engineer here. And really what doesn't Paul do is an easier question. He's also the pride of Scotland, but I'm going to get in trouble from Gary for saying that. He's a two-time cloud and data center management Microsoft MVP, and he wears a lot of hats here at Chocolatey, not the least of which is being our lead of operations. I'll hand over to you, Paul.
Santa.
Thanks, yes, and he's got another hat that he's wearing today. Excellent, excellent. I'll hand over to you, sir. Yes.
So one of the many hats I wear, as you can see, is give me a second, I'm just going to share my screen here, is Santa hat. So today is obviously 12 Days of Chocolatey, working up to Christmas, so I thought that was most apt. But anyway, my name is Paul Broadwith. I'm a senior technical engineer working with Chocolatey software, and I've got almost 30 years in IT. Various roles in many different sectors, like finance, manufacturing, nuclear industry, defence, all sorts of different sectors I've worked in, all sorts of different roles as well. I'm also the lead engineer on Box Starter and the C Choco DSC resource, and I'm an MCT and an MVP. I also want to point out that my hat does have a little white bobble, but you can't see it for the green screen, so we'll move on. It is there, I promise. Oh, I've just lost my screen. There we go. Next slide. That's right. So the agenda today. So we're going to be managing home and offsite workers and how we go about that.
Hey, Paul. Sorry to bug you. I'm just I've stopped sharing my screen, so you can share now.
Is my screen not being shared? Oh, rookie mistake.
There we go. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Hey. So let me load this up. There we go. That's what we need. So the agenda today is we're really looking at managing home and offsite workers. That's really relevant, as Adil said, in kind of today's environment. But I think generally for IT teams, certainly going forward, there's going to be more and more home and offsite workers, whether that's working actually directly from home, or that's working for coffee shops or maybe smaller type offices. There's definitely going to be a lot more of that. So we're going to look at how we would do that. We're going to look at the organizational best practice as well for working with Chocolatey, and also using package internalizer. We're going to look a little bit towards the end on how we internalize packages and what that actually means. We're also going to look at a kind of diagram of a Chocolatey flow and how things should probably look within your organization. We'll touch on package internalizer there as well. And we're going to look at really what this today is all about, and that's helping your users help themselves with self-service. If they can do install, upgrade, uninstall, and generally manage software, manage packages on their machines, then it takes that sort of responsibility away from IT teams largely. We're also going to look at how users can play nicely and how we can sort of segregate packages and allow one department or one team to access packages that another team can access. Also links for further exploration of how you want to get more from today. There's other things that you can look at, and also a little bit of Q&A at the end. So the problem is really that managing office and home workers, how do we go about that? So let's have a little bit of a history lesson sort of. When I started way back, the very first kind of network I worked on was Token Ring. I don't know if any of you remember that. That was some time ago. That was with an IBM AS400. That was kind of my first role, was as a system operator on a large mainframe. What we tended to do when we're installing software, not on a mainframe, but onto users' machines, was we tended to just sort of walk down the corridor. We went to see those users, we went to install that. And traditionally, first of all, that was with a floppy disk. Then we progressed on to CDs. Yes, I know I'm showing my age, but you know, let's bear with me. So that's what we would do. We'd go down there, we'd install the software, we'd install software on someone's machine, either by logging into that machine ourselves, waiting for the user to go on lunch, and sometimes they would leave it logged in. And that was kind of more acceptable back then. The security landscape was a little bit different back then. You certainly wouldn't do that now. Or it was installing the software while the user was actually there. So what you're doing is you're wasting the user's time a little bit, because you know they can't do their normal job while you're installing that software. But you know, by and large, what I'm trying to see here is it was very resource intensive. Even if you look at it, moved forward to today, and moved to more modern things that we do, where if you're still going to wander down the corridor, you're going to use a USB key, so it holds more software or larger items of software. But even if you want to connect remotely, users still need that software installed. And as an IT team, you're still doing a thing, whether that's walking down the corridor or connecting with software. You're having to do something. You're having to take time out of your day. You're having to sit there. You're having to do that, wait for the install to finish. You're having to do all these things manually. So it's resource intensive. It's relatively simple to do, but it's resource intensive. So if you want to install software for home and remote workers, it is a little bit more complex. Excuse me, Tara. Now, users now, we're working from home or remotely, they're connecting through a VPN, let's say. There could be other methods that they're connecting to, but usually it's a kind of VPN of one flavour or another. But in order for you to connect to those machines, whether it's to install software or troubleshoot those machines, you have to use certain tools to do that. It's much more complex. You've got the VPN layer in front of you. You might have policies as well that stops those users logging in unless their antivirus software is up to date, for example, or they've got certain pieces of software on their machine. So it's become much more complex. There's many, many more layers in front of what would traditionally be there if you were working in an office. And trying to troubleshoot a machine remotely is much more difficult than it is it's actually standing in front of it. There's just things that you can't do remotely that you can do in an office, and you have to get the kind of users involved in that. So things are just more complex all round. It's the landscape that's now here with us, excuse me, but it's just more complicated all round. One of the reasons for this mass shift to home and remote working is, of course, COVID. Now, some organisations did have a remote workforce. Some had partly a remote workforce, so it might not be a huge deal to some IT teams. But I'd say that the vast majority of IT teams, certainly the people work in the office. But COVID, as I said, was unexpected. It was not here one day and it was here the next. I think other than a couple of people in the world, the rest of us mere mortals had no idea it was on the horizon. So just moving quickly on to that next point, because they tie very well together. Because COVID has appeared, because COVID is now given us a remote workforce, those IT resources that we had to work in an office have suddenly had to pivot from work for managing users that are in the office to managing users that are at home or working remotely. And that's been very, very difficult for some IT teams. So the resources there have been strained a little bit, because you're taking your finite resource, which is your IT team, and you're saying, hey, you have to do this new thing that you've possibly never done before, and you have to do it by tomorrow. It's obviously strained a lot of that. But I think going on to the next point as well, working from home puts pressure on people. We've talked about the pressure that's put on IT resources. So when we say people here, we're not just talking about IT resources, IT teams. We're talking about normal everyday users. Bob from finance, Sue is a developer, where these people as well have had pressure put on them because they've worked in an office for a lot of their career, and now suddenly they've been asked to work from home. That's a different set of skills, working in an office to working from home. Anybody that's worked from home or remotely for any period of time will tell you it's actually a completely different set of skills. It can be very difficult for some people. Some people it's very easy for. It's the same as some people are very happy to work from an office, and some people prefer working at home. It's just different pressures on people. So that's been very difficult as well for people having to cope with that move, and then suddenly not having the IT team there to help them, and suddenly having to connect through different types of technologies as well. We'll come on to a second. It's put that strain on people, and that doesn't help those relationships between IT teams and the rest of the business. But as I said as well, for some IT teams, this has been, part of what they've done before. But the majority of IT teams, I would say, it's a different set of processes they have to use. What a process for installing software for office users is much, much different from installing software for home and remote workers, as it is for troubleshooting, as it is for anything that you have to do. It's a different set of processes. And those processes, for the majority of those IT teams, are untested. They're new. They're getting used to how they work, and when you're getting used to a process, you're much slower at putting it through its paces, and that's when people, going back to the people part, maybe get a little bit more strained that things are taking longer than was the case when they were working in the office. So again, you've got that extra pressure on people sort of feeding back in itself. And finally, we've got that technology as well. As I mentioned, that some offices, some organizations will use VPNs, some might use something different, but let's just stick with VPNs because that's probably one flavor or another which most organizations are using. It could be something as straightforward as OpenVPN. It could be some niche product, maybe that's tied to your infrastructure, your network kit, maybe some Cisco VPN or something like that. You might have 2FA on there as well, to second factor authentication. You might have, as I mentioned earlier, policies to stop people connecting unless they've got ABC on their machine and their antivirus is up to date. So those technologies are very new for maybe a lot of staff. So suddenly you're saying, we don't need any of this stuff hey, we need all of these things in place tomorrow. So that technology's had to be implemented very, very quickly. And also because your IT teams are not new to it, again, they're slow at picking these things up because it's a new process. Perhaps there's training involved. The whole process is very, very stressful on people, process, and technology. That's really, really important to understand. And finally, it's difficult getting the right tools into the hands of working from home staff because they are remote, because these things are new, and because these things potentially are maybe not tested. If you're using products that you've never used before, it's difficult getting them into the hands of those staff working from home. So the solution really is helping users to help themselves. And I'm going to read these 3 points and then elaborate on them, because I think that while there's only 3 points there, it's important to go through them. So it's bringing together tried and tested solutions to ease the pressure on staff. Now, the focus on that word staff there is IT staff as well as finance, developer, all other types of staff within the business. So you're bringing together tried and tested solutions such as Chocolatey that your team are familiar with using. They've used them for a long time. Chocolatey's been around now for 9 years, almost 10 years. It's a tried and tested solution. So using that's something that your teams are already familiar with, eases the pressure on IT staff. And if it's eased the pressure on IT staff, they can run with it more quickly, implement it more quickly. And that therefore eases the pressure on the rest of the business staff as well, because they can see that IT, in air quotes, know what they're doing. Now, helping users help themselves by giving them the ability to pick their own tools, their own software. What that then does is it takes that pressure off of the IT teams. Now, as I've kind of elaborated quite a number of times so far, there's a lot of pressure on IT teams. So the more pressure you can take off them, even if it's a little bit, that's really, really helpful. And it allows IT staff to get on with doing the job that now they're having to do very, very quickly, which is pivot from on-site to off-site, using these new technologies, implementing these new processes. All of that is a great deal of stress, as we've already said. So if you can give users that ability to pick their own tools, thumbs up for everybody. And you're also giving IT staff the tools to provide those services quickly. Jumping back to the first one, because it's very similar, you're giving IT teams tried and tested solutions for them to implement. And if they can implement them because they're tried and tested, they will implement them quickly. And as I said, that benefits the business as a whole. Now, what we've got here in front of us is probably something you've seen if you've been to any of the other 12 days of Chocolatey. This diagram has been used a number of times. We've got a couple of changes to it, and I'll actually elaborate on them in a second. But if we look at the top left-hand corner there, we can see the Chocolatey community repository. Now, that repository is probably been said several times so far, but let's reiterate it again. As an organization, we don't recommend you use that directly. Now, the reasons for doing that have been said a number of times, so I won't go over them again. But the plan is that you would take those packages and internalize them. I'll explain what that means in a minute, and use them within your organization, within your private repository server. Now, in that blue box you see in front of you is what we have inside the quick deployment environment. And I'm running that today as part of the demo. But the only part that I'm actually using is the repository server. I'm not looking at any other components because they have been looked at on other days. But the quick deployment environment allows all of this to be contained within one virtual machine. But if we actually just look at the individual components themselves, admin workstation, if that's where you would probably sit as a sysadmin, what you'd be doing there is you'd be using Chocolatey for Business applications such as Package Builder, Package Uploader, and Package Internalizer. Now, what you'll be able to do with Package Builder is create a package within 5 to 10 seconds. And what that'll do is by right-clicking onto an executable or an MSI or something, some other installer that's part of the Windows, huge Windows ecosystem, and Chocolatey will then create a package from that. Once that package has been created, you can then upload that to your repository server, which is on the right there. So that's your private internal repository, and then your endpoints on the right-hand side will be able to consume those packages in a way that we're going to talk about in just a second. But what we've skipped off is Package Internalizer. Now, you can use that from your admin workstation, or you can use that from the Jenkins automation pipeline, as we've seen below. I mentioned Jenkins purely because that's what the quick deployment environment comes with. But you could use any automation pipeline if you're doing this separately. So you could use TeamCity, for example, to add in there as well. But what that will allow you to do is internalize those packages. And Google Chrome is always the example I give. So if you want to internalize the Google Chrome package, let's say you internalize version 70 of Google Chrome. What that does is it will take down this version 70 of the Google Chrome package from the Chocolatey community repository. It will then see what resources that package requires. Now, the Google Chrome package requires the Google Chrome installer that downloads from some server in Google somewhere. So then bring that down, put it inside that package. So you now have a package that has all of its resources contained within it, all of the resources internalized, okay, to your organization. You can then take that package, you can take it to a secure network, you could take it to an air-gapped network, you could take it to just to a network that's not actually part of this network here, and you can install it onto those machines because it doesn't have to reach out to the internet for anything, because everything it needs is inside that package. So you then have version 70, that's up in your repository server, and let's say it's installed on your endpoints. As part of your automation, what you can then do is check Chocolatey Community Repository, go, version 71 of Google Chrome is now available. Automatically, you can download that, internalize that, and then push that to your repository server. And then that will go on to your endpoints. Then version 72 of Google Chrome, then 73. So you can see how that can help you take away from your IT burden of managing packages as well. You can use that automatic internalization process to be able to take that time away from your IT team, let them go on and do their job, and have the package updated automatically. And through the process we're going to talk about just in a second, that you can have that deployed to your endpoints every time it's the new version is available. What that does is it makes sure that your endpoints are always up to date. And what do we get with up-to-date software? We get secure software. We get more secure software. We don't have 0 days in there. We don't have as many bugs in there because they've been fixed with the previous versions, from the previous versions. So you're getting a more secure endpoints as well with the patched software, the more up-to-date software, and that is all done automatically for you. As mentioned, the repository server, that's your private internal repository server. And just below that is your Chocolatey Central Management as well. So what we can do with Chocolatey Central Management is we can find out from our endpoints which software is out of date, get reports on that, get reports of which software is installed where, for example. What we can also do is use Chocolatey Central Management deployments. So we can actually, we've said in the repository server, get that software onto our endpoints. We can deploy that software onto our endpoints once it's been released. So version 71 of Google Chrome gets deployed through Chocolatey Central Management deployments, version 72, 3, and on we go from there. But you can also do other things with Chocolatey commands, and you can run PowerShell scripts, a whole host of things you can do with Chocolatey Central Management deployments. And that was actually talked about in a previous day in the 12 days of Chocolatey. So I won't go into any further in that. But here we're looking at just to the right of the middle, we've got configuration management deployment. So we've got our packages up in the repository server. And here we've got Puppet, we've got Ansible, we've got PowerShell DSC, and we've got SCCM actually pushing those packages to the endpoints. So if any software is out of date on those endpoints, then they can be updated automatically for us. But what we're also doing here is we're actually giving users a choice of which software to install for certain scenarios. Now, it's important to kind of talk about the differences between giving users choice and making sure the users still have mandated software on their machines. So, for example, if Google Chrome is a requirement for a business application that you're using, you don't want the users going ahead and uninstalling that and therefore never being able to use that business application, then having to raise all those help desk tickets because things are just broken. What you want to do is you want to say you need Google Chrome. Do you know what? If you want to use Firefox for everything else, that's fine. So they can go ahead and they can install Firefox for themselves. You can also, as we'll see later on, if you're a developer, for example, you might have Visual Studio as a mandated application, but you might want to do something like allow the developers to install Putty or WinSCP, because do you know what? They're connecting to Linux machines. You don't have to get involved in that. They can install them for themselves. But what you're doing is you're approving the software by providing it within your private repository server. So you're not saying to them, install whatever you want. You're saying install authorized software that we as an IT team have said that, yeah, that's good for us to use. So what we want to talk about now is our fabulous users. So we're going to go into a demo shortly. And we need to talk about the two users who we're going to be using for that demo. So we have Bob here. Bob on the right-hand side, as you can see, has been very secretive. He works in finance. He likes long walks on the beach and candlelight dinners. But what he also does is Bob thinks he's a secret agent, and he has full administrator rights on his machine as he loves to install software, which helps him be a secret agent. So Bob is actually an IT team's worst nightmare. Now, I include, when I say an IT team, but my background is operations, sysops, sysadmin type roles. So I know that Bob is the IT team's worst nightmare because I've met Bobs. You will have met Bobs. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's Bobs everywhere. They require admin rights to the machines, and they cause havoc because they install software, they uninstall software because, hey, that's what they do and that's what they want to do. What Bob also loves to do as being a secret agent is clicking every link under the sun that is sent to him by email. And as you can probably guess, that causes a lot of problems with malware. So we'll come on to see that later on. So Bob, as I said, IT team's worst nightmare. In contrast to Sue, who works in development, she likes swimming, canoeing, and backpacking. She has no administrator rights on her computer at all. She's quite happy with that because the software that the IT team has supplied her with and the IT team is allowing her to install through self-service is enough for her. So she's IT team's favorite, one of IT team's favorite users, because they can get along with that. She doesn't raise many help desk tickets because there's no administrator rights on that machine, so she can't run amok deleting things, uninstalling things, removing things that she shouldn't be doing. So before we actually jump onto the demo, I want to talk about demo scripts. Now, as you'll see me in the demo, I'm going to run some scripts back and forward. You're probably going to sit there and go, that's not the way you would do it. And you're absolutely right. It's not the way we do it, but it is the way you would do it in a demo. And the reason I run the scripts is so that I can get the changes made instantly and the feedback instantly as well. That's really important for a demo, as we don't have a huge amount of time to sit and wait for things to happen. So we want them to happen instantly. So as I said, just a caveat, this isn't the way you would do things in production, but it is the way we're going to do things in a demo. So we're going to move on to that demo. And we're going to look at Bob's machine first of all. So this is Bob's machine. And as you can see, we've got Chocolatey GUI running here. And Bob, as we said, is a secret agent and he loves installing software. And he's actually going to install 7-zip from the Chocolatey community repository, as you can see there. This is a Chocolatey community repository. So if you install Chocolatey open source, free and open source, you will get the Chocolatey community repository already there. It's an organization, we recommend you remove that. And as we go forward, that's what we're going to do. But I want to show you just now that Bob can actually install 7-zip. Just to prove that Bob can install anything he wants. Now, 7-zip could be malware-ridden software, if you want to look at it like that, or it could be anything that Bob can install off the internet. So that's 7-zip just installing there. And as you can see, that's it done. We've got the tick there, and we've got inside this PC, we've got 7-zip install. So that's it there. But what Bob also likes to do is he likes to remove software. Now, you would think as an organization that you would install some important drivers on a machine. You would call it important drivers, and people wouldn't remove important drivers. But Bob is not your normal user. So important drivers could be something like software that you would use to connect to a scanner, let's say, or a printer, or it could be important drivers on the machine. Perhaps it's chipset drivers or something else. Whatever it is, it's important, and it means that Bob shouldn't uninstall it. But Bob, being Bob, wants to uninstall it because he doesn't know what it does and it doesn't really matter to him. So he's now uninstalled that software. So when Bob comes along and he goes to use the printer, the scanner, or whatever it is that the drivers are for, and it suddenly doesn't work, Bob will then raise tickets with the IT team, probably get quite frustrated when he finds out that, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a time because, you know, we can't respond instantly to everybody as IT teams, that he suddenly can't print or can't scan, when in actual fact, he did this to himself. So as I've mentioned, Bob is one of those nightmare users, but just to make the nightmare a bit more real, we're going to have a look at some software that Bob has really kindly saved to his machine. And Bob got this from an email, and it says this is not malware. So obviously it's safe to run. So Bob, being Bob, would have downloaded this and clicked on it. And lo and behold, Bob is now infected with malware. And so is all your network machines that this machine's connected to. So Bob is a real headache. He's doing things he shouldn't be doing. He's not following proper process, proper common sense when using the machine. You can't mandate common sense. And as we can see here, Bob certainly doesn't have much when it comes to malware-riddled software. So what we're actually going to do now is we're going to remove Bob's admin rights, because really that's the only way you can stop people uninstalling and uninstalling software. Let's be honest. So in order to do that, I'm going to run one of those scripts I talked about. I just want to make sure I've got this here. There we go. So that's comes without the box. I'm not giving any secrets away here. I just wanted to make sure that variable was actually there. So we're in this repository, and we're going to remove admin rights from Bob. Well, what this is going to do, and you'll see, I'm going to explain it in just a second. It'll actually connect to Bob's machine, and it does everything remotely. So this is these scripts I was talking about that I'm running, okay? And what it does is it actually flags up what it's actually running. So you can see this, and there's no smoke and mirrors. So what it does is it just removes Bob from the administrators group on that machine. So Bob needs to log out and back in again for this to take effect. Now, bear in mind, I'm using local groups on the computers here. So Bob is actually on his own machine, and we're removing them from the administrators group on that machine. If you've got Active Directory, which, you know, a vast majority, I would imagine, would have some form of it, you'll remove them from different groups, of course. But this is a demo. We're doing things very straightforward just now. So what we have to do is we have to log out and log back in again. Now, what Hyper-V, which is what I'm running here, does helpfully for me is completely mess up the formatting of everything. So I'm just going to, we're going to move back the way, that's all. There we go. What I'm going to do is Control L and there we go. No, I need to remove this. Give me 1 second. We'll stop shared just a second. And
Paul is trying to save us from the demo gods right now as we speak. We're doing it live.
And there we go. That's awesome. What happens is the Zoom, that we're using Zoom, and the controls are right on top of where I need to be, unfortunately. So what happens is when you come out of a Hyper-V full screen, it makes it not full screen and then hides all the controls. So I couldn't log back in again. So give me 1 second till I do this. And we're going to log back in as Bob. Okay, and there we go. And it's half the screen. So where are we?
So just going to take a second while Paul's setting this up to say if anybody would like to submit questions for today's talk, they can go ahead and drop that in the chat on the platform they're using, and we'll definitely answer that. And also we have day 12 questions to wrap up everything if we don't cover anything today. But appreciate your interaction, folks. Yay.
There we go. So what we've done is, just to recap, we've removed Bob's administrator rights. And we can see that if we go back to his malware-ridden software and go in here and here, and of course it's not malware, it should be good. It's prompting for administrator credentials. That's what we want. So Bob no longer has admin rights. So if we go back to Chocolatey GUI, and we can see what's installed on the machine. Let's go and try and uninstall 7-zip. And this will fail. There we go. So it's failed to uninstall 7-zip because Bob doesn't have admin rights anymore. So while he can see the Chocolatey community repository here, and while he can see all that lovely software like the Flash Player plugin that's almost gone and it's not going to be supported anymore, he can no longer actually install that software. So we've removed admin rights from Bob so that he can't install any more software, any more malware. But what we want to do is we want to install Chocolatey for Business onto Bob's machine, because what that will do is allow us to control what Bob can and cannot install through things like repositories. We get a whole feature-rich set of tools that we can use there. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to run configure Chocolatey agent on Bob. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll explain these commands as they go as well. So it's actually installing the Chocolatey for Business components. I apologize if I'm looking over there. Sometimes that's where all of you are. So it's kind of non-intuitive. So I apologize. But what that's going to do is it's going to install the components. So here, what it's doing is it's running the QDE client setup script. So as I mentioned, we're using QDE here. We're only using the Nexus part of it, but QDE is still there. So we're going to utilize that, and we're running that client setup script. And what that does is it sets up some stuff, standard changes for Chocolatey, such as the command execution timeout in seconds. And it'll actually disable the Chocolatey repository as well. And then it goes ahead and installs Chocolatey extension. It's checking Chocolatey GUI is installed. It's now going to install the Chocolatey agent as well. While it's doing that, let's look at the other things it does. Always the way. Let's let it finish. So it's installing Chocolatey agent. It's starting Chocolatey agent and make sure it's going to run. And then it's enabling and disabling some features. So we'll talk about them as well as soon as that's finished moving. Bear in mind that Bob's machine didn't have any of the Chocolatey for Business features or software installed upon it. When we come to Sue's machine, she already has some, so this won't take us long. But we'll look at the features here. So it's disabling elevated warnings. What that does is when you run Chocolatey and you're not an administrator, it will say, hey, do you want me, you're not elevated. There's not much I can do. Do you want me to run anyway? We've disabled that because we're going to use the background service. And that's what the next one does, use background service. And it's telling Chocolatey to use that. And the background service is Chocolatey agent. What we're then saying is use background service with non-administrators only. So as an IT team member, or you being an IT team member, you would probably log into the machine and you will have administrator rights. Excuse me. So the background service won't run because it doesn't have to, because we're already administrators. But for people like Bob and Sue, they're no longer administrators, and therefore the background service will run for them. Now, the next one, the next two actually sort of tie together. I'm going to do the last one first. What we're saying here is the background service commands that we're allowing people to use is we're allowing them to use, install, upgrade, and uninstall. Just checking I was on time there and I got distracted. Install, upgrade, and uninstall. Out of the box, Chocolatey, the background service will only allow install and upgrade. So we've added the uninstall in there as well. But the one just before that, allow background service uninstalls from user installs only. What that means is users can only uninstall software that they have already installed. So as we've said previously, if as an organization you've got you've got Google Chrome installed and you're saying you have to use that, we have to have that on our machines because our business applications require it, but you want to go ahead and install Firefox, that's fine. We don't worry about that. Then what that's saying is Bob, who's installed Firefox, can uninstall Firefox if he wants, but he can't uninstall Google Chrome because he didn't install it. And just like if we had this already in place when important drivers were there, because Bob didn't install important drivers, Bob would not be able to uninstall important drivers either. So that's really, really powerful and really important, and it helps us with part of a scenario that Bob was able to exploit earlier on. And what it's also saying there is it's disabling the chocolatey.licensing source. Once you install Chocolatey for Business, it adds that chocolatey.licensing source, and that's where you can download licensed components from. But because we've internalized all of that into our organization's private repository, we don't need that source anymore. So we're going to go back to here, and in order to pick up the new sources, we actually have to rerun Chocolatey GUI. So here we have what we're seeing now. So we're seeing the Chocolatey internal repository. Now that comes in QDE out of the box. So that's what's already set up in Nexus. Okay, and if we click that, it's going to show us all that software that's there. Now we're going to just install a piece of software called I'm Googling the brain just now. GitHub CLI. Okay. Now the reason we're installing this is it's actually fairly small and will be fairly quick to install. Now bear in mind that Bob couldn't install software previously. He wasn't able to, he didn't have administrator rights to, and 7-zip uninstall failed. Now here we're installing GitHub CLI and it's installed. We've got that tick and we can see here that it's actually installed already. Okay. But what I want to show you, and the reason for that is because of Chocolatey Agent. The Chocolatey Agent actually installed the software for Bob because we've allowed that on the machine, you know, when we configured Chocolatey Agent. But what that also does is it allows us to run it from the command line as well. Chocolatey Agent will run with any Chocolatey commands. So it's not just within Chocolatey GUI itself.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
Could you just show off the tile view? I just want to show users that they can pick either one because I like to see that.
Ah, yeah, it's the list view is good for demos.
Yes. Okay.
Let me clear that.
Fair enough.
And do the tile view for that as well.
Yeah.
So it's not picking up the icons just now, but there you go. Well, if that was picking up the icons, then you would see, for example, the 7-zip icon there. You would see the, you know, all of the icons for the software. And we can actually click on that as well. If we double click, we can get some more information. There's 7-zip there. We can see all of the information from that, and we get the options to pin, reinstall, and uninstall as well.
Awesome. All thanks. Of that. Thank you.
So I actually prefer just because it's easier for me to see. I hope everybody's okay with that. I actually prefer that one just for the demos. But yeah, it's important to point out it's not just that. You can see the tail view. So if we actually run a command line, we're going to actually uninstall GitHub CLI. That's just to show you that you can use I've run the wrong thing. You can use the Chocolatey Agent for both, you know, Chocolatey GUI as we've seen, but also for the on the command line. Anything that runs Chocolatey commands can do that. What's important here is, first of all, Chocolatey Business is installed because we licensed that using the QDE setup script and running in background mode. And what that's saying is the background agent is actually installing and uninstall this software. And it's important to point out as well, if you're auditing your software using the Chocolatey audit function, what will happen is you'll be able to see that Bob had actually installed and uninstalled that software, and the Chocolatey agent, you know, is there as well. But the audit purposes, you can see that Bob did it. Bob started that. Bob initiated that. What we're actually going to do now is we're going to jump back into Nexus and we're going to sign in, because what I want to do is I want to create a repository for finance. Now I know we're looking at 20 minutes we've got left or so. I want to show you how to sort of segregate the software for your users. So there we go. That was a bit of a shock then. It said there's no repositories created yet. One of those panic moments when you're doing a demo. So we want to create a Nougat hosted repository, okay? And we're going to call it finance because Bob is in finance, okay? And we're going to just accept all the defaults. So Bob at the moment can only see the Chocolatey internal repository, and that's where we would keep all of our common tools in our fake organization. You would keep all your tools in there, but we want to have finance specific ones. So we're actually going to go and populate that with a few packages. I'm just going to copy some of this over here. So yeah, we've created the finance repository. We're going to just push some packages to finance. Okay. Oh, and I keep forgetting to do this. That's going to push finance application and business application. These are just dummy applications I created for the benefit of this. Now we've created that finance repository. Now we need to let Bob's machine access it. Okay, so we need to tell Chocolatey on Bob's machine that, hey, there's a finance repository there. So we're going to do add Choco sources to Bob, and that's going to connect to Bob's machine and run some commands. And I'll explain what these are doing in just a second. And there we go. So it's disabled the Chocolatey repository, and it's disabled the Chocolatey license repository. Now that's belt and braces. They weren't on Bob's machine because we removed them when we installed the Chocolatey for Business components. What we've done there is we've added the Chocolatey internal one. That was already there. And we've also added this new finance one. Okay. So if we go in here and run Chocolatey GUI, oh, we've got Chocolatey GUI owned. Now we need to close it because in order to pick up those new sources, we will have to run it again. And there we go. We can see that Bob now has finance in there. And we've got these two applications. Restricted finance application and important business application. So what's happened is Bob in finance has been made as part of a new team. And as that member of that new team, they need this new restricted finance application. So as an IT team, you've just created that package and you've pushed that up to your private internal repository, the finance private internal repository, and you've said to Bob, that software is there, is now for you to manage. If you want to install it, then you can go ahead and do it from there. And if Bob ever leaves that team, or let's say maybe it's a temporary team, it's been set up for a specific reason, perhaps it's year end, then Bob can actually uninstall the software again because it doesn't need it anymore. So let's just go ahead and install that. Now this package, as I said, is very small. So there we go. We've got the tick there to show it's installed. And it is there as well to show that it's there. Now, again, just to reiterate, Bob does not have administrator rights in this machine, but he can still install and uninstall that software. So if we go back here again and we want to uninstall it, and I'm just going to, again, just show you that Bob can still do this. And it's running in background mode again. Remember, that's important. So it's the background agent that's doing the uninstall process. And that's been removed. So again, Chocolatey Agent works with both the command line and Chocolatey GUI as well. So we're going to actually have a look at Sue's machine now. But before we do so, we're actually wanting to go back into our QDE server. Now, what we've seen is that Bob is part of the finance team, and he's got a finance repository with all the finance software on there. Sue's a developer, and as part of a development team, she needs a developer repository with all her development software. We don't want to put it into Chocolatey internal because that means everybody has access to it. We also don't want to put it onto finance because it's not finance software. So we're going to put it into create a new repository called developer, and that's a Nougat hosted repository. And there we go, that's created, and there it's there. So if we actually go back to our command line, we'll go just run some commands. We're going to push some packages up there, first of all. We've done it again. And that's pushing up developer application, just the one application for that at the moment. And then we need to tell Sue's computer about it. Just like we told Bob about finance, we need to tell Sue's machine that Chocolatey has a new source. And it's disabled the Chocolatey repository, the Chocolatey licensed repository. It's added Chocolatey internal, and it's added the new developer one as well. And now what we want to do finally is we want to configure Sue's machine for Chocolatey for Business. Ignore that red text. I'll explain that in just a second. That's actually me. The word con was typed into the script by mistake. That was me. And just ignore that. But what that's doing here is exactly the same as what it's done to Bob's machine. We're running the QDE setup script. We're changing things like the command execution time out seconds, and we're disabling Chocolatey. We've already done that, but this script does all of this as well. And it's going to install the Chocolatey license on there, the Chocolatey extension, the Chocolatey agent as well. Some of these are already installed and won't run. For example, Chocolatey extension is already on there. Chocolatey GUI is already on there. And Chocolatey agent's just installing. So what we're doing is we're making Sue's machine, we're installing all the Chocolatey for Business components on there, and we're also setting it up as we've done in a previous script for that developer repository. Now you might be saying, why didn't I do it with the one script? I wanted to show you the steps and explain what we were doing rather than running through one huge script that does everything. We're going to do something similar. As you can see here, it's the same sentence, the allow background service uninstalls from using installs only. We're going to do something similar that we did with Bob's machine, just to point out that Sue's machine is exactly set up in exactly the same way. And there we go, we're nearly done. That's it. So we're going to go into Sue's machine now, which is the one away over here. So as you can see, Sue, this is, I opened Chocolatey GUI before we started, just to show you, this is the repositories that it had on there. So we've got Chocolatey and Chocolatey license. So we're just going to close this down. And we'll start Chocolatey GUI again. It picks up those new sources that we've added on. And now we've got this PC, developer, and Chocolatey internal. Similar to Bob's, Bob had this PC, finance, and Chocolatey internal. Chocolatey internal is where we'd install or put all of our common packages that we're using. Developer is where we put all the development packages. You see, there's only one in there, and we're just going to go ahead and install that. Again, we'll point out in just a second, in fact, let's do it now, that Sue doesn't have administrator rights, because we're just going to try and run Windows PowerShell as administrator. And there you go, it's popping up saying, hey, give me the password because you're not an administrator. So as you can see, that's been installed. It's also installed on the PC. There we have it there. And again, I'm going to do what we've done with Bob's machine. And I want to show you the background modes running because we've installed on Sue's machine. There we go. And it's running in background mode again. It shows you that we have Chocolatey agent installed. And there we go, that's all done for us. So Sue has very, very similar setup to Bob now, except she's a developer, so she's got access to development software. As you can see, we've just removed the developer application. We've just uninstalled that. And we can see here, it's if we refresh this, it's gone from here as well. So there's something I mentioned at the beginning, or should I say, sort of at the beginning with the slides, is we talked about internalization. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to internalize some packages. As Sue is a developer, she perhaps has to connect to development machines. Sorry, not development machines, Linux machines. So we're going to internalize the PuTTY package and the WinSCP package for her so that she can use them. So I've got a script to do that, and I'm just going to, I've done it again. I'm just going to talk through what this script is doing. So we just created a temp folder to internalize our packages to. We're downloading putty.portable, the latest version, and we've internalized that to the ctemp folder. We're now looking at internalizing the WinSCP package, and you will see there that chocolatey-core.extension is actually a dependent package for WinSCP. So that's why it's internalized 3 packages. We've only asked it to do PuTTY Portable and WinSCP, but it's actually done chocolatey-core.extension as well because it's a dependent package of WinSCP. And then it's pushed them up to that developer repositories. So if we go back to Sue's machine here and we go to developer and then we refresh it, we'll see that you've got now 4 different packages in there. And what we want to do is we want to install WinSCP. This will take a minute or so. And what this is doing is it's going to go away to your private internal repository, not Chocolatey repository, because bear in mind that this is the developer repository we're installing this from, which is on the QDE machine that we created, that we have, and that we created the repository just earlier on there. So it's installing that software from there. And if we actually go back to Bob's machine, we can see that Bob doesn't have that anywhere. And what also Bob can't do is add it. So if we go choco add source, and we're going to call it developer, capital D, and the source is HTTPS Choco server. It's 8443/repository/developer. It's actually Choco source add, not Choco add source. And you can see there it fails to actually add that source. So Bob can't come in and go, hey, I want access to all these developer applications. It's not possible for him to actually do that. So, and it's the same with Sue. She can't add the finance. Now, what you can do is you can put permissions on the repositories as well. So you can have users, give users usernames and passwords so that even if Bob did get administrator rights and wanted to add the developer one, he wouldn't have the credentials to do so unless he was given permission. So if we actually go back, we can see that WinSCP is now installed. And if we go back to here, you can see that it's installed. Finally, the final thing I want to show before I finish is that you can see that Notepad++ is out of date. So because what happens is we've installed 7.7.1 onto the machine, but since then, through that automation pipeline we showed a way back on the diagram, we've now got an updated version of Notepad++. Now, what you could have done is pushed out that update through Chocolatey central management deployments, through SCCM, Puppet, Ansible, PowerShell, DSC, or you could wait for the user to update it manually. It's entirely which way you want to do that. But here, what we're going to do is Sue's actually spotted, hey, this is out of date, and now she's going to update it. And now you can see we actually now have version 7.8.9 of Notepad++. So that's the demo for today. So what I want to just summarize is managing home and offsite workers. We looked at initially managing the home workers, where I was talking about when I, way back when I started, how we would do it, sneaker net, if you like, where we would go to all the machines. And we looked at how we actually do it now. But that helps us with home and offsite workers, how we manage them and how we pivoted from suddenly going from on-site staff to off-site staff. We talked about the organizational best practice for working with Chocolatey when we looked at the diagram when I talked about that we don't recommend you use Chocolatey Community Repository directly. We also looked at package internalizer. We internalize those packages there at the end. And then the whole point of today was helping users help themselves with self-service, how we set all that up with Chocolatey GUI, how we remove the Chocolatey repositories that are there. We only gave them the internal approved repositories that we have and the approved packages that are in there. And we ensured users played nicely as well by giving them their own repository. So finance had one, developers had one, and we also had a common one for everybody as well using that Chocolatey internal one. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to hand back to Adil.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks for all that great content and information. And in fact, we have a little bit of engagement in the chat as well, if everybody can see that. So that's awesome. Let's address a couple of those questions too, but I'm going to throw these links up for now as well, so you can copy them down. So a couple of the questions that came up during the chat, Paul, specifically. So being able to push packages. So end users, are they able to push packages in any way to the repositories or interact with the repositories other than consuming packages from them? Like, can they explicitly add the yes command, the source command, to try and install from a repository if they don't have admin rights?
Add in the source command if they don't administrator rights. No, they can't do that. I showed that at the end there when Bob was trying to add the developer repository that Sue has access to. So no, you can't do that without administrator rights. So the background agent will allow you to manage software. You saw the commands. We said install, upgrade, and uninstall. That's the 3 commands. We allowed that to happen. If you want normal users, let's say you Bob starts creating packages and he's awesome at it, and you want to give him permission to push packages to finance, you can absolutely do that. In order to push a package, you need what's called an API key. Just think of it as a password, and you could absolutely give Bob permissions, or his API key permissions, to push packages to that repository if you wanted to, and you would do that within Nexus or whichever repository manager you're using.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for that. So glad that we're addressing that on the stream as well. In addition to that, I think a couple of people said similar stuff about adding sources and what the users are allowed to do, like pushing packages, which they can't do. Really, if they don't have permissions, they can't do any of that.
Yeah.
One of the things that Jay brought up in the chat specifically was the fact of refreshing. So how does the view refresh, or how does the repository refresh? Generally, you log out of Chocolatey GUI and you log back in order to see that, like you did. Is there a mechanism or a roadmap plan for auto refreshing that Chocolatey GUI?
That would probably be better answered by Gary Yunpart as he develops that. But I would imagine that was probably on the roadmap, but he would be able to say yes or no to that. The only thing you need to kind of close Chocolatey GUI for it and reopen it is if you're adding sources. If you added packages to a repository, for example, as a show, all you need to do is click that little refresh button in the top, and it'll go away and refresh the packages that are in repository. So it's just really for sources.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that answer. So Chris as well in the chat specifically asked about apps that are available. Like, how can you control apps being available tied to a specific OU in Active Directory or anything like that? And I believe some of that stuff, just to level set for you, Chris, is really dependent on the repository application that you choose. It can be it can be Sonatype Nexus, JFrog Artifactory, or some other Nougat v2 repo. So really, the administration or the role-based access control piece of that is tied to whatever repository management solution you choose. But you could tie that to something like some sort of Active Directory user group with Nexus, right, on our backside, Paul?
Yeah, no, you certainly can tie it in there. Depending, as you said, depending on repository manager, you get a whole host of different types of permissions you can use. Nexus has got a lot of fine-grained permissions that you can actually add. There's an awful lot there. So yeah, you could do it with that and be able to tweak those permissions to allow that to happen.
Awesome. And thanks, folks, for submitting those questions. In addition to that, I'll just quickly mention what we have up here on the top and the links as well. Actually, in the bottom of this slide, there is a day 12 Q&A session. So if there's any general questions you had for any of these 12 days, feel free to submit them at that ch0.co/day12 questions chat link. And that actually allows you to vote up those questions too. So we have them and we can prepare answers for you as well. So we'll definitely wrap that up on day 12 for sure. Also, just a couple other links right up front. Chocolatey for Business features, of course, the feature video series. That includes 2 videos on self-service and Chocolatey GUI specifically. So check out ch0.co/c4b videos. QDE, which Paul was using today, that is QDE v2 has a setup video whole session. And so we discussed that on day 6 as well. You can go back and watch that video. But in addition, that series of playlists is available at ch0.co/QDE-videos. And of course, if you're using the distributed approach of installing all the separate pieces of Chocolatey on your own servers, sort of if you want to scale up a solution to thousands and thousands of endpoints, generally we recommend you use that Chocolatey in the organization link to watch that video, ch0.co/org, that breaks down the different pieces of a Chocolatey ecosystem solution in your environment. So with that, I'm going to slide over and talk about our schedule. So these are the events that have gone on so far. We, of course, have a couple more sessions. Please do tune into them live if you can. Tomorrow is going to be a real good one. So day 11 is unannounced here, but it's a special secret session from the Mad Scientist Lab of Stevie Coaster. So Stephen and Rob will be joining us, and they will be they'll be enlightening us on the other cool stuff that's coming there. I've seen some of it, folks. It's really exciting. So tomorrow is going to be really big. Definitely tune in for tomorrow if you can. And also day 12, the wrap up. If you have any questions from any of the other days, if you're watching any of the videos back and you're like, that was a good idea, but I really had a question to follow up on it, feel free to submit that at that ch0.co/day12 questions, and we'll address that there. So I am now going to just drop this link for the survey into the chat, and if you fill this out, we should, and people let me know if it didn't go through or if something messed up with it. Oh, it doesn't look like it's allowing me to submit the link here. Not sure if I'm going to need a hand from someone on the Chocolatey side to do this. So, yeah, looks like it went through this time. Let's see if it goes to all the platforms. Can everybody see that okay? Oh, there we go. Okay. just making sure that the link is in there, and then you can fill that out for the survey to win a prize for today. And so any other stuff you guys are touching on, we definitely addressed it in Q&A, but of course, again, you can always use that day 12 questions link to follow up as well. Thank you all for your time. I know we love you showing up and tuning in every day. It means a lot to us, and hope you have an enjoyable rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow here. Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Merry Christmas and ho, ho, ho.
Have a good one, folks.
Bye-bye.